Here we go. So I don't even know if we need to talk into these. Like, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
but probably for the record, I
oh
don't know
yeah,
if they're
for the record.
the mic.
So we're here to talk about these individuals and the trials and tribulations and everything they've done in their home country of Colombia and Venezuela, right? And what developers go through in Latin America in general, like the challenges you face, the unique perspectives you might have on the industry, and just how it's all working out for you. So we'll ask the whole questions until we get through some of an overview, and so. But we'll start with introductions. So we'll just go from you, Enrique, and then come on down this way.
All right. So, yeah, I should use this. So my name is Enrique Fuentes, and I'm a Venezuelan, and I started my studio from Venezuela like 12 years ago. From the most unlikely place you would imagine. We were the first video games studio there, and it was a very, very crazy idea. And I always like to say it was more out of ignorance than bravery. So yeah, we didn't really know what we were getting into, but that's why we did it. And but yeah, a lot of passion and a lot of we identified a lot of talent and a lot of people that wanted to work in the video games industry that didn't have any possibilities to do so. We started working with companies in the entertainment area in the US, like Disney, Nickelodeon, eventually Namco, Atari, but at some point I moved to Bogota because of probably we'll get into more detail on that, but I guess you all know how things are in Venezuela at this point. So I moved to Colombia. That was 8 years ago, and I started the studio there. I shut down the operations in Venezuela last year, which was a very painful process, but necessary. And now all of our operations are based in Colombia, in Bogota. We are 28 people in the studio, working in different projects and platforms, from mobile to PC console. And the company is called Teravision Games. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Hello. So hi, my name is Carlos. I'm the CEO and founder of Below the Game, video game studio down there in Colombia. So I'm not from the capital. I'm from, I was born in a place, but my studio is in Bucaramanga. So it's even less known than the capital. Nobody even knows how to pronounce Bucaramanga. So we are 14 person team. We've been around for 8 years now. We actually have another studio called Sick. Actually, sickness, the mind. We want to be smart. Doesn't always work. We focus a lot on creativity. That's kind of like our aim. Different mechanics, different designs. And it was, as with Enrique, it was really, really hard. As with a lot of people here in the US, being an indie, it's really difficult. And you imagine being an indie overseas. Coming here to all of the events, at the beginning was mostly focused on either gaming, entertainment, all that stuff, all that blackface, which a lot of us have to go through. But eventually we got a lot more into entertainment. We have also worked with companies here in the US for different types of products, mostly services and outsourcing for different companies from creating the idea to the final execution. And finally we are now working on our own IPs. We're about to release our first game for PS4 and Xbox One. It's called Heinrich, on PC of course. It's coming out on June 6th, and we're really, really excited about that. So yeah, that's a little bit of who we are.
So hello, my name is Eivar Rojas, co-founder and CEO of Efecto Studios. Efecto Studios is a company focused on deliver services for companies here in the States and Canada. We do a lot of content for video games, mostly concept art, modeling, animation. And finally, from last year, we started doing our own stuff. It's a strategy game. Yeah, it's really interesting. I started in 2002 with the very first video game studio in Colombia. It was called Immersion Games. But it's been fun how everything is moving faster than we thought like 10 years ago. The industry is growing a lot. Actually, it's not a ¿cómo dices? Casualidad. It's not random that we are seated here because we're moving really fast in order to establish the Colombian industry like a hotspot in South America. And we think that the pool of talent that is there and all the passion, creativity is growing really fast. So yeah, here we are.
All right, so let's talk about some of the challenges that you faced, kind of getting your studios going, like sometimes with no funding, right? Sometimes with, sometimes without. Like, how do you creatively do that, and what kind of resources or advantages might you also have had because you were in an area that had never, I mean, surely there must be some excitement around being some of the first development, software development and game development companies in your area.
Yeah, the way we developed our studio was 100% bootstrapping, right? So when we started, for us, success was defined by getting a project, like getting a client. And then by the size of the client or how known the IP was. So that's how we started, and we kind of grew from there. The most difficult part was probably impossible part was finding people with already experience. Like nobody had experience in video games. There were no other companies around, so you couldn't have an experienced producer or an experienced 3D artist or an experienced programmer. It was always people that were really good at what they did, but had zero experience in video games. Like Eivar was saying, nowadays that's not the situation, not the case. Now you find people with 5 years of experience, 10 years of experience, and more people, because now there are probably about like 15 like real studios in Colombia, and I'm talking about studios that have more than 20 people and are working on interesting projects and are 100% focused on video games. So now it's like a virtuous cycle because kids that are in school or in college now see that there's an industry out there, and if I study this thing, I could actually become a game developer, and there's opportunities to work in the industry out there. So I think that was like the biggest challenge back then, was finding the right people with the right set of skills and experience. We had to develop everybody while we actually were also learning how to do things. So we were not the best teachers. We were just all falling down and getting up again and learning with trial and error. But yeah, at this point, I think we have learned a lot of lessons. There's no funding for video games in Latin America, so everybody, it's either has a rich uncle or you just bootstrap your way through work for hire. It's actually our case still. We still are bootstrapping with work for hire, but we're fortunate that we have been able to also work on our own stuff, and like we have been exhibiting our game here. It's called Neon Fury. It's a VR game. I don't know if some of you have been able to see it, but yeah, I think a lot of bootstrapping. Government, I will have to say, and I'll let Eivar talk more about that because he has a very good grasp of that. But it has been very supportive in Colombia, especially. And yeah, I mean, I think a lot of heads are starting to turn towards Colombia. Before it was a lot due to, or the way we were positioning ourselves was because it was cheaper than everywhere else. Then we realized that was not a very good pitch, that was not a very good way to position ourselves. because that has the association with low quality. And actually, we believe, you know, the things we do are in par with a lot that can be developed everywhere. But of course, there's the price advantage as well, and the fact that we are aligned time zone wise with the US helps a lot to, you know, to be attractive for partnering with US companies.
Okay, so a lot of what probably all of us say applies to a lot of what we've done. Of course, we are also financing ourselves and our games through a lot of work for hire. That has been the case since starting the company. But you know, as this great businessman that I like to quote, called Enrique Fuentes, you know, the creativity that we've developed, it's also coming from great necessity. So we have the imposter syndrome, but you know, in our case, it's on steroids. Because as you can imagine, you know, being in Colombia, we have very few people who to contrast ourselves with. So you know, we think that everything we do, it's like it's not worth it. It's not, you know, back in the day when we're starting, it's like, yeah, we're not good enough. We're not doing, you know, things are interesting enough. So we give ourselves a bigger push and put a lot more pressure on ourselves to create something different, something unique. So by trying so hard to being different, to creating something that no one has ever seen before, we have, you know, put a lot of eyes that are out there in our company. A lot of times it helps a lot with differentiating ourselves from people from everywhere else. So yeah, I mean, we cannot tell people, hey, we're the cheapest, because there will always be someone who is offering services at a lower price. But we can offer something different, offer something that is good quality and a very interesting design. So that's how actually the company started. You know, really started at the beginning. We had a lot of the trials and tribulations of any indie, like, you know, paying salaries and staying afloat. But after people were starting to see that the concepts were really interesting, it didn't matter a lot where we were coming from. It mattered what we were capable of doing. So I'd say, you know, that funding actually came from that. I mean, I have no rich uncle, or at least he didn't want to give me any money. So we had to come up with the ideas. And in Colombia, we have this other issue that here in the US you probably don't have, is that a lot of the companies actually value the knowledge and, you know, the conceptual knowledge. So in Colombia, if you don't have, I mean, I was saying this, especially in my city, if you don't have you know, brick and walls, it's so hard to sell something. It's so hard to put a high value on that. Like they think that it's just, hey, just press, like we saw yesterday in the movie, a button that says make game. Then, you know, the game gets made. So it doesn't matter the amount of hours that you have to put into and the amount of people. So we try to sell our services there in Colombia. Didn't work, of course. But then, you know, we came here and offered those things that were a lot different. People were starting to value them a lot more. So I think that funding actually came from that creativity meeting the right market that could actually appreciate that.
Okay, in my case, the first issue that I had to solve was trying to convince my father that doing video games in 2002 was like a way to work. Because Colombia is the 80-90% of the income, all the PBI, GDP is oil. So everything regarding creativity or technology in 2002 was nothing. So So trying to convince people that we were trying to do a company that will be developing video games was really interesting. Obviously funding, nothing, but thanks to all the efforts from Kike alone, from Carlos alone, from several good friends in the industry, finally we got together like in 2010 almost. And then we figured out that everyone was trying to do the same but alone. But once we met together, it was like boom. Because it's not boom in terms of hundreds of companies, it's boom in terms of how every company is sustainable now just doing video games. So for me, that is like the biggest achievement we could reach. But obviously now the situation is way different. The country, the economics of the country is developing really, really good. And finally the government in 2011 started like hearing us, because it was funny, previous that is there like promoting offices from the government, like trying to sell exports around the world. They didn't understand that we were working, in my personal case, we were working from 2002. We worked with a lot of companies out of the country, but no one knew that we can work from Colombia doing big projects, getting a lot of money from those companies to Colombia, and we even have like a formal identification to develop video games in Colombia. So for them it was like a service, but service means like BPOs or companies that just provide services. So finally we convinced the government that no, we're real. We generate employment. We generate like a new way of employment. So now it's way easier for a company to start doing video games, because as Kike told us, the experience is now finally a good pool of experienced people. And now our main challenge is how to position the country in America, not South America, in America, because in terms of culturally alignment with the States and Canada is something that is really a good advantage. But obviously taking that alignment with the cultural side is really interesting, because we can get that and transform it. Like, you're familiar with that, but it's in a different perspective. So it's really interesting challenge for us, working harder to position the country.
All right, and you had just said something that was really cool. Like, you had that moment where you realized that you were all doing the same thing. Like, what at that moment? Like, how did that change things? Like, what started happening after that? Like, once you realized that, because I think like here, even at ECGC, you go walk around and see everybody is kind of trying to do the same thing, especially at the student level, and people are trying to just form their own studio so they can learn a lot from that realization you had.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing was to realize we were not competing with each other, because I think there's that tendency that you see the people around and that kind of rivalry. It's a natural thing, right? It's the companies that surround you, and everybody wants to be the best in the place where they are. But once a game hits the App Store or hits Steam, it's literally competing with the whole world, right? So it didn't make much sense for us to compete with each other or to see each other as the competition. So we became, and we said that it was something that was actually talked about. Like, let's have a meeting, let's sit down. 2010, and we had lunch with studios that were around at that point. And we said, let's try to build this thing together. Let's try to make it grow for everybody. So that was something that was said, and we act that way. We have been acting that way. Actually, we named the panel Tres Amigos, three friends, because it's actually how we operate in our case, with each other and with other studios in Colombia. And we try to set the example by, like leading by example, by being super open with our information, super open by how we operate, and even our mistakes, especially between us and when we have the opportunity, having IGDA events or meet and greet events, it's all about sharing information. It's all about not necessarily presenting like the pretty face of the company, like, oh, everybody's super successful, we're all doing extremely well. It's about talking, about the real issues we're facing. So this very interesting dynamic started to happen between us that became some kind of even like a therapy. Like we would meet just for coffee.
Coffee therapy.
Yeah, coffee therapy every week. And like at a certain point, I didn't have money to pay the next payroll, and I would call these guys. Like, I need a coffee, guys. Like, I need somebody to tell me it's gonna be okay, because it always it's an up and down industry. But somebody's always in a kind of decent position. Somebody's like really thriving, and somebody's like really suffering. So, and it fluctuates, right? It's not the person that's doing like really, really well at some point might have a very, very bad year. So we try to look at the guy that's doing well and like tell me everything is gonna be okay. Tell me this is gonna be you were in this position last year and now you're still alive. So that helped a lot, and I can't stress that enough. I think that's like the core of what we're building in Colombia is that collaboration, and it's really, really working. And the fact that we're still doing business and we're still alive and sane, I think has a lot to do with that.
So I don't know if it's clear enough by now, but of course, Quique was started the company in Venezuela. When he moved to Colombia, started working there so closely with other Colombian countries, Colombian companies, and of course, Eivar was there, like the pioneer in that. And I have to say this, and I look up to them. I mean, I still do. They're these really good businessmen that when I was starting the company, it was like how do they do it? How are they doing it? And when we started becoming friends, that was something that I really, really enjoyed. Those therapies. We still do. We still have a lot of those. We just did, like a few minutes ago. Like, how do you do this? How do you handle this part? How do you cope with with the stress, with the pressure, with having to pay the payroll? What's your wrong way? All those elements, and understanding that it's a very similar pressure to the one you have, and you thought you were alone, and you thought you were the only one who was thinking this way, who also had this fear of getting out of the industry or not creating games anymore. It does help, and it does help. I mean, maybe you won't solve the problems in the same way, but you will definitely learn from past mistakes. I mean, you can fuck up as much as you want, but try to learn from what they did wrong, and they are teaching you that. So be open to actually learn from the people that have lived through the experience. Don't believe that you're the only one who has the answers, and be humble enough to really hear other people's advice. So yeah, I mean, I can say that I've gone through a lot of what we've achieved thanks to a lot of the advice that I got from these guys. And I have to add this very small anecdote that the first contract that we signed here in the US, I got advice from these two guys who barely knew me at the time. And like seriously, I just walked to them at ECGC and I was asking. I still do, but at that moment it was special because they didn't know my name. So I was asking, hey, what do you think of this opportunity? They were like, yeah, maybe have you considered this and this and this? And yeah, we ended up signing a really good contract, and it was thanks to the help of the people that have gone through the same path that you want to, that you can grow faster.
is there a really big and heavy responsibility to be a Colombian video game developer? Because probably in the States are there thousands of companies trying to do video games, but
So how many other countries down there have burgeoning video game industries?
Chile, Uruguay, I mean all the countries from Mexico to Argentina has really strong ecosystem of companies. But something that is really interesting, like in the States, are there, I don't know, 2,000 companies. If someone closed the company, it's like, okay, next one. But in Colombia, we have the eyes from the government, so it's a huge responsibility to maintain the business. So that's why we're trying to do something that we really want to do, like do video games, but at the same time, we need to make sure that the risk is not big enough to screw up the business, because we don't want to open a space for the government to say, you know what, these people is crazy, they're doing crazy stuff, they're not making any money, so let's let them in some corner. So every decision, and that's why it's kind of a dependent relationship between the companies, is because we don't want to be out of the business because we didn't ask. So that's why we do a lot of work for hire in order to have this like cashing machine working, and in parallel trying to do our own stuff. And is there other big impact? Having access to education in Colombia is kind of hard, because the economic situation for a lot of people is not in good shape. So, but finding out that you can learn just watching YouTube videos and learning how to 3D modeling or concept art. Personally, I find out that people that learn by themselves is way better than the people that goes to university. Probably, I hope they're not a teacher here, but I find out that hiring people from really poor areas is really amazing, because we found so many talented people that is like in 3 months they are better than their bosses. So it's really amazing. So the impact that we can generate just as a company, just generate in employment, is big enough to continue doing it. So that's like for me like a big challenge we have in our shoulders.
All right, so we talked a lot about the challenges you face, but like, what kind of unique perspectives do you, obviously you're influenced by the game industry as a whole, probably a lot from the US, but like your own perspectives, like having received those influences and kind of process them differently with your own environment, your own surroundings, and your own culture, like how do you think that positions you to be able to give back to the industry and push forward?
You want to start? Yeah. Or you, and so I don't always start and get all the good answers.
Well, so I think Colombia, we have a lot of influence from literature. We have these really amazing writers, and it's just, again, we develop as a lot of that literature mixed in with our games. So I think that our culture mixed in with as Eivar mentioned, like a lot of the pop culture that we live, that we were raised with, it's from the US. Like we watch the same shows, we still do. We still separate our Sundays for Game of Thrones. Like that is a thing in the whole country. So Breaking Bad was as huge there as it was here. So the pop culture it influences us so much, but that was mixed with our own culture, with the books that we read, with the music that we heard. Of course, we hear a lot of music from here in the US, and I'm a big Stones fan, but also I'm a fan of metal from Colombia, of music from Colombia. So all of that mixed in creates this really interesting product that, as was mentioned, of course, again, it's familiar, but at the same time, it's different. It's looked at through this weird prism, through these different eyes, that you feel good playing it, you feel it's fun, you feel it's interesting, but at the same time, it's something unique. It's something that you hadn't seen before, and you have to try it for yourself. So you can actually try Neon Fury by Teravision Games. You'll tell them which I don't know which booth it is. So by the IGDA booth.
Yeah.
You can try it out for yourselves and see that things that we create, feel very familiar, but have this very different look, have this very different aesthetics that we try to put into. So I think that's how we approach things. Familiar, but at the same time unique.
So I think one of the resources to push creativity connected with the same culture is the risk that you take trying to do something. So we really want to be successful in terms of the economics are good. I mean, everyone is pursuing money at the end of the journey, but at the end, the impact you can do doing a good stuff is big enough that the money. So I felt that because the responsibility to be in the industry, leading the industry, working hard for the industry, pushed us to think and rethink, because we can try to do a battle royale with AR and with cryptocurrency. That would be amazing. I mean, I can imagine how many companies in Canada or in the States are trying to do that. But we can't. We can't just use the buzzwords to do projects, because it's risky. I mean, is there, I don't know, 100 companies trying to do the same here? We need to move in, we have to move in a different way. So the only way is with creativity, transforming and just changing directions with the same ingredients. So I think that's why it's really challenging, but really fun at the same time, because it's trying to hit the global market, because it's not Colombian market, it's the global market. So we need to be really close in the basis, but obviously really different in the gameplay design.
Can you each give examples of projects that you're glad you took and they went really well for some reason, and also projects that in hindsight you wish you hadn't taken because whatever the reason might be?
We have two binary experience, 0 or 1. When we developed our first project with Ubisoft, was called Self Factor in 2009. It was a first-person shooter. It was Quake Arena, but with Unreal Engine 3. It was really easy. It sold really well, but it was a copy of a game that we just added like physics, and that's it. It was like an arena where you can play against other players. So really like copy the idea from Quake. Then we had the opportunity to work with a Mexican publisher, and we developed a lucha libre game, wrestling game, and we really believe in that project because we put in so much effort to show something that is not very well known in the States. I mean, everyone loves this wrestler from WWE that is like a Mexican wrestler, the small one. I don't know what is the name for him. Everyone loves him. So we thought that taking that experience, but with 32 luchadores from Mexico, with the whole culture around it, was like a big hit. It was the worst project in terms of sales. But in terms of creativity, for me was one of the best projects we have been involved.
What could have made it a hit? Licensing or better?
It's fight against 20 years of WWE. It's like trying, and actually we developed like a Mario Kart, but it was called a Chavo Kart, like the same cards, tracks in Brazil, in Mexico, but the perception is how you can fight against 12, 20 years of experience against that 1 year shot. So yeah, that was my experience.
Yeah, I think probably my biggest, I don't know if regret or learning has been working on games that we were not able to finish. Like we have a limbo of unfinished games, you know, like a half model guys in that limbo. You know, it looks like there's only characters there, and so no game is good if it's not released, right? And I think we took many times on projects that were bigger than what we were able to accomplish, and actually trying to get a check from a publisher, and that might work here in the U.S. and because you know there's a healthy ecosystem for developers going for funding to publishers, but in our case it's been really difficult as a whole industry. So some projects we were, instead of trying to release the game that we could make and set the scope there, we were kind of dancing to the tune of publishers. Every time we pitched, they would ask like, why don't you do it like this, or why don't you add that? And we would keep iterating the game, trying to get that money from the publisher instead of releasing in the market and actually, you know, making a game that probably would fail, but it's a release game and we'll learn a lot. So the ones that I feel really happy about are the ones that we're releasing, and the ones that we are able to kind of self-edit ourselves and say, okay, this is the game we can build with the resources we have, and let's put it out there. So I think that might be the biggest learning I have in terms of releasing games.
All right. So now that your companies are kind of, you're dealing internationally, you're working with clients outside of your even Latin America, right? Have you encountered any stereotyping, either from the press or from publishers, or you know anybody that you're working with, because of where you're from?
Right. Well, the first thing I always say is that I have to be super early in every meeting because it's kind of expected that we are late in Latin America. Like, you know, there's this stereotype that we're not, you know, punctual or so. We try to be like extremely structured and extremely organized and extremely punctual with everything. Like internally we have, you know, like very solid processes. I haven't really felt like an unspoken, you know, stereotype in that sense, but it's harder for us to. It was harder for us to get projects without a very solid portfolio. So we really had to build like a bulletproof structure, very organized, and you know, like making sure that we didn't validate any of the stereotypes. Like you know, Colombia is not the Narcos Colombia anymore. And you know, it's a very fun show to watch, and you know, there's always this cool aspect of, you know, the mafia and you know, narcos, but it really harms, you know, the perception of the country because you know, people think that it's still the same country, that still, you know, that those things are going on in Colombia, and it's a radically different country. We had the opportunity and the privilege to have Randy in Colombia last year. We invited him, and he was super kind to come. And I think, you know, I'll let you, you know, jump to that. But I think he had a blast, and he found a very safe and fun country. And that happens consistently with everybody we invite to Colombia. It's like they get like really surprised by what they find and the structure of the studios and the infrastructure of the city, yeah, so I hope we could have, you know, like the whole world for a week in Colombia and then back to their countries to actually see how things are there. It's not possible, so we have to, you know, do a very good job at spreading the word and just showing results.
In 2010, when I had the opportunity to be in the very first E3 show, showing the Lucha Libre game, we had to convince one newspaper reporter that we have computers in Colombia. The question for him was like, okay, I had a friend that went to Argentina, and in the town that he was staying, there were just one computer. So how you can develop a video game with one computer? So for me it was like,
We take turns.
Yeah. And it was like, okay, how can I answer this without being rude?
So what did you tell Mr. Trump?
That that we have two computers, not one.
The best.
I'm talking about 2010. Now the perception is improving a lot, but having this perception that after San Diego, Tijuana to Argentina is the same Tijuana is really hard to explain. It's like, man, it's a whole continent. It's not just one country that condenses all the countries, Chile, Argentina. But finally, it's happening. And this is something that helped us a lot. It was the government supporting us with a big event we developed in Colombia. It's called Colombian 4.0, and inviting people that understand that yes, we have airports, we have internet, we have computers, we have a lot of people going to the event. So that helps a lot because we needed that. Yeah, we needed to convince real industry influencers that it's a real deal. And the second one that Kike mentioned was about Pablo Escobar. I have to deal today telling, Pablo Escobar died 20 years ago. Please stop calling him because he's not alive. It's like being here asking for Al Capone. Like, do you know what is Al Capone? It's like, man. So that is other big issue. I try to joke a lot around it, but it's still hard to say, you know what, thank you for your bad perception, but everything changed. Because even the people don't ask about, okay, how many employees do you have? It's like, Pablo Escobar is alive or you have cocaine in your pockets? It's like dealing with really like stupid questions. So, but we need to come very often to the States, and every person that I met, I'm trying to make sure he understands the context of the industry and the economics of the country, just making sure everything is well understood now.
So we've done a lot of pitches to look for projects, for funding, for all of that, for publishers. And once a good friend of mine in the US told me, after I showed him the presentation, at the beginning there was a picture of us, the whole team. He told me, if I were you, I would remove the picture. I was like, why is that? Like, it's just that Colombia is not a proven developer country, and you guys look way too young, and you guys look way too Latin. So yeah, that was hard to swallow. But the hardest part is not hearing that from him, but it's actually understanding that a lot of the people that you met think that way and never tell you. Actually, at that moment, I understood a lot of the perspectives that a lot of these companies had. So yeah, it was really hard because we actually needed a lot of validation before we could actually get to talk with a publisher and, get serious feedback, get serious interest. Like we do now. We actually, have very good conversations for projects, for really big projects, for funding for games, for R&D. But starting out, it was completely different. We had no validation, we had no perspective, and the fact that people like Eivar and Kike have worked on so many projects that has helped the country be validated, because companies working on with good IPs, with good projects, helps the whole country. It's true. Being a Colombian developer has a huge responsibility because everything you do, people will associate with the whole country. If you do a great game, Colombia makes great games. If you do a crappy game, Colombia makes really bad games. you're a whole country. So, and sometimes, not even a whole country, a whole continent. Good, you know. Yeah, that was the expression, not way too Colombian, way too Latin. So, and sometimes when you don't charge as low as they sometimes expect, that is also hard. You know, because they think, okay, this is cheap. This has to be cheap. So it was through a lot of portfolio, it was through a lot of work, through a lot of years, and trust from some companies who have this, who don't have this bias, that we got, you know, a lot more serious perspectives and a lot more serious offers. So we did experience a lot of that stereotyping, especially at the beginning.
Well, I mean, that's good. Question.
Have you been able to leverage those stereotypes or those interactions to work for you, and how?
So actually, this was completely by accident. It was not planned at all. But as I mentioned, one of the games that we made, it has these really deep connections with literature, right? And we worked with a Russian publisher. And for some reason, Colombian literature is particularly well received in Russian. Ask me why, I have no idea why.
It's obvious.
Russia, Colombia, of course. And I started working with the publisher, and he told us, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who's the writer of 100 Years of Solitude, would be proud of you guys because you're making this game. I'm not sure if he would be proud. I'm not sure if he, you know, liked or even understood video games. But the fact that he said that, you know, was playing so much in our favor. So again, not a strategy, not well thought, just an accident. But I thought anecdotally it was something that played in our favor. So sometimes, as with the negative things, you don't plan them, some positive things just happen also.
So, segueing into more positive stuff, like knowing the challenges that you face, some of the stereotyping that you've battled back against, you're where you are right now. And just like, I would love to hear a little more about like recent amazing things that are going on with you at your studios, or personally with your studio, like winning awards, the games you're working on now, just so that people here know like where you're at and where Colombia is at in the world.
Well, I think probably my biggest and more recent satisfaction has been here, the reaction we have been getting from our game, from me and Fury, and it's super motivating and validating because it's a game that, you know, no publisher or client asked for, and that's also pretty scary. Like when you start, like when you have been working on work for hire for so long, and now you have like, okay, now we can make this, and you have a blank page, like what do we create, right? And it has been very, very self-validating for me, and especially for the team of, you know, super talented people. I feel so blessed by having that. You know, the game is actually really, really well received. Like people really, really like it. So that's super motivating. And I make sure I keep writing the team back all the time and like send pictures of everybody playing and comments. And in real time, I'm keeping a G-Doc with feedback, and they're already working on the ideas to address that feedback. So that's amazing, and that's something that, you know, it's very encouraging. And also we're working. I guess we can talk much about it, but we're working with Randy on a project, and well, we feel super, super fortunate to be doing that. And with Efecto actually leading the charge, and Teravision Games, we're providing some of our people for the project, because it's really our first PC console game we have been working on, so we have a lot to learn. But the team has been really, really up to the challenge. So I mean, just the fact that we feel like we're moving now onto games that we actually feel passionate about making makes a huge difference. I mean, like all the difference in the world. Before we had people motivated just because they were working on video games, even if it was making a Dora the Explorer game, which I'm not saying anything wrong about the IP, but it wasn't exactly what the people that was working with us was passionate about making. So now, with this project, I see like the real quality really shines. Like you can feel the passion that they're putting in every polygon and in every line of code. So that for me is happiness. I could almost define happiness by that, like going to work with people that passionate on projects that are meaningful for us.
In our case, we had a really great opportunity to work in ARK Survival Evolved. In the last 3 years, we developed almost the 70% of the content for the base game and the 2 DLCs released. And finally, when we started doing ARK, we didn't believe in the impact of the project, because in 2014 was like, hey, you know what? We want to do this game with dinosaurs and people naked. That's it. And we're like, okay. I mean,
that's a great pitch.
Yeah, and it was that, like naked people and dinosaurs. That's it. Survival. So we didn't believe at the beginning, but once the early access version hit the market, it was like, shit, this is big deal. So we didn't imagine that, even the wildcard team didn't imagine that. But understanding that we have the right talent, the right quality, the right production values, encouraged us to say, you know what, we need to move in a different level. And as well, in parallel, we had the opportunity to start prototyping Darwin project, that is a very well-known project right now, and being involved in Dark and Light project. So finally, during the last 3 years, we find out we have a really good talent with really good experience. And then we met this guy, like finally, like let us know that it's not a matter of Efecto or Teravision, it's a matter of how the talent is in the right moment to do whatever we want to do. So yeah, it's been pretty exciting.
Okay, so in our case, as I said, we're releasing our first PS4, PC, and Xbox One game, so we're really excited about that. That game was also nominated for the Gamer's Voice at South by Southwest last year. That was really cool. It was an Indicate Select in Europe, so that was really cool as well. And just 3 weeks ago, Game Connection, during DEC, our newest game, because we're of course already working on the new game, got 8 nominations for the Game Connection Awards, and we won 5 of them. We're the game that won the most awards at the venue, so that was incredible. The most incredible part is that the whole jury panel were publishers. So it was very interesting to see so much interest. Actually, one of the awards was Most Promising IP. So, being the most promising IP at a business meetings with publishers means a lot. And the business meetings that we had, after that were really, really good thanks to that. So that was a tremendous validation of our work, of what we're doing, of the team talent. The validation that people coming from Bucaramanga in Colombia are capable of creating these games that these great publishers from all over the world consider to be one of the most promising IPs they've seen. People saying, even, you know what, I don't care about the awards that you won, that means nothing to me. I just think this is awesome. Another publisher saying something like, this is the best thing I've seen during GAC. things like that actually make you believe in yourself. Because as I said, the imposter syndrome for us, it's, weighs heavily. So all those things mean a lot, and that's tremendous validation, and that's something very positive that has happened to us, and that I think it's great that people coming from anywhere in the world can actually experience these things.
Yeah.
What's your general breakdown between doing your own projects and doing either external partnerships or work for hire, or however you want to define that, but basically your own versus working with someone else?
Yeah, in our case, historically it has been like 90% work for hire, and then like a 10% that becomes 1% at moments, which is just like one finger of one person. Yeah, I mean, right now, what we're trying to find is more of the type of projects we're doing with Randy. That's something that we feel like it's kind of our own project in a way, because the team is super passionate about it, and also the way we work with them is they provide like very, very solid creative direction, but they also leave a lot of creative freedom on the team, as long as we don't disappoint, I hope. So, as long as the thing is moving forward in a good way, so we remain like that responsibility, we keep that responsibility, but those are, I would think, are the ideal projects for us in terms of balancing our own projects, because it's always hard to bootstrap and to self-fund something when you're relying on work for hire projects. But yeah, I would say between 90% and then the 10% that fluctuates a lot.
In our case, when we need to have the caching machine working is 90-10. But last year, once we finished ARC, we had like the opportunity to have the 30% of the company working in our own project. But now we need to move back to the 90-10, because again we need the caching machine working again. We had the opportunity to spend like 8 months, 10 people just working on our own project in Coherence. But yeah, it depends about how the flow of the money is going.
And for us, just recently, it's been the past year, there was almost no cash involved because we were completely focused on Heinrich, on our own project. So of course, we had no time to take work for hire, outsourcing, or any type of project. And we hope we can reduce to a minimum the projects that we do for others and focus a lot more on the projects that we do for our own IP. That's our aim. But of course, unfortunately, the 90-10 for us, it's true also for money. The money that has entered the company is 90% work for hire, 10% for our own IP.
I just wanted to ask, so like as someone who is not in like a publisher role or like a larger company in the States, but like thinks that the community is stronger when we have more diversity, especially like non-US and non-Canadian game companies in like the sort of larger meta ecosystem, like what can I do as just like a more like US-based independent freelance kind of person to like support external developers or developers outside the US, like, and just make sure that, like, I don't know, that the connections are stronger across the borders?
I can say this. I think one of the things that could be done would be to be interested in what other companies are producing. Follow their games on Twitter. Talk about them with your friends and family, and try to get people to check it out and be interested, because they are doing some things that are very unique. They are adding their own twist to games, and I think that's really will end up being interesting to people who give it a chance to check it out. And it starts and it seeds with everybody here in the audience and out there as well. Get interested in things coming from other places, because that challenges your mind. It challenges your gameplay. You're going to be experiencing new things. So yeah, it's just spread the word. I think that's the first step that I think people can do, right?
Yeah,
Follow these guys' games and companies on Twitter right now and Facebook.
The fact that you're sitting here today, it's a great first step. I mean, like, we appreciate you guys coming and expressing an interest on our community and our region.
It doesn't matter.
Cool. So do you guys work with nationally, or all of your teams located in Colombia?
In my case, we do have people. We have people in Canada. When I say people in Canada, I mean one guy. A couple of people in the U.S. Working with us, and then in Colombia, most of the team is in Bogotá, but a few of them are in other cities working remotely. And we do also hire freelancers very frequently from wherever they're sitting at the moment. But yeah, I mean, most of the team is normally in Colombia, but yeah, we do have people all over different places.
In our case, we're very used to work with other companies, like for example, ARC is made by 4 companies, one in Egypt, one in Florida, one in Colombia, and one in Seattle. But the core team of Efecto is located in Bogota. The funny thing is, like, all programmers are out of Bogota, in different cities in Colombia. We have not that many experience working with freelancers, because we're not good trying to control all the confidentiality and that stuff. So we want to make sure that everything stays in-house.
So in our case, it really depends on the need. For instance, we work a lot with US-based writers, or the QA that we had for a game was done in Poland. The publisher is in Czech Republic, so we're pretty used to work. I mean, one of our biggest clients is flying through all the world. So he wakes me up Sundays at 3 a.m. Because for them it's like Monday 3 p.m. Like, hey, how are you? Are you awake? I'm like, yes. What do you need? So we're used to working with people from everywhere. It just depends on the need. A writer that has, I mean, as much as we enjoy products and culture from the US, we're now native speakers. So someone who has the education and the preparation and the knowledge from a native speaker to write a good story, yeah, we will totally work with them. Or some counseling from experts in UX. We work a lot with UX experts, with game design experts from Canada, from France, from the US. So yeah.
You are all developers in-house, do you have any developers from elsewhere in Colombia? Like, do you have like people from the States working in your offices, or?
I mean, at least in my offices, no.
No, I mean, that's something we have been wanted for a while. Like, really get somebody from. I mean, we have Venezuelans. We have like half of our team is Venezuelans, people that I actually brought from Venezuela to Colombia.
Yeah.
And the other half, I mean, it probably doesn't sound like much of a cultural difference, but it is. We have very different words and very different stuff, and so it's a very fun environment, to share that cultural differences. But
yeah,
that's something that we're really looking forward. I mean, we have tried actually. We have reviews on resumes. The operative aspects haven't worked yet, but it's something that we're really looking forward to have people from abroad in the studio.
Yeah, my dad is from Caracas and my mom is from Bogota. So
oh, really? So you know what I'm talking about, right? Cool.
Good. So
Gracias.
Right here, and then we'll follow up right there, and then we'll.
This is kind of a two-parter. When you're producing your products, obviously you want to sell it to the entire world. But going back to mixing your cultural twists and whatnot, with the stuff that you've already made, how does it compare? how it was received in your country as opposed to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I think, you wanna?
I don't know how to say that.
Yeah, well, it's a very good question because it's a very interesting thing that happens that when something smells too much like it's been made there, the local people don't like it. Like most of the time, Venezuelans and Colombians and most of all of Latin America, we consume exactly the same pop culture you guys consume, right? Avengers is big and God of War is big. All the games, all the movies, all the music is practically the same, but with some, and it's always perceived like that's the highest, quality of entertainment we have. So, interestingly enough, the games that have done the best in Latin America, created in Latin America, are very, very universal things, like Kingdom Rush. You guys know Kingdom Rush? The tower defense, who knew it was made in Chile? In Uruguay, sorry, it was developed in Uruguay. And
Fallout.
The Fallout shelter was made in Chile. Or Horizon Chase, which is a mobile game, very retro, it's made in Brazil. So, but when you look at them, they don't have like really Latin American themes, but they do have something unique about them. They do have like a different approach, a fresh approach to those games. So when we launch something, when we try to launch something, it's a universal thing, and I think the market mimics whatever happens in with the rest of the products that you will consume. Like Latin America is going to be a percentage of sales. It doesn't really make a difference for games created by us. It keeps the same proportion. It's not like people. It's more eager to consume them because they were created in Latin America. Quite the opposite, actually.
If it succeeds in the rest of the world,
That
it will
would be a good
succeed
sign.
in Colombia.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
It has to come.
So sadly, we've come to the end of our time, but any questions, we'll kind of hang out front, and you can ask them. And we're also set up in the IGA booth on the other wing as well. But thank you all for coming, and make sure you do take the time to follow the games, trade business cards, and get interested and spread the word.